Growing up in the small, quiet town of Ashmere, there were many things that felt peculiar. There were no fast food restaurants, no big city buses, and no sprawling shopping centers. Just one main street, lined with an antique shop, a bakery, a hardware store, and a library that always smelled like old books and candle wax. People were kind but distant. Children played in the parks but never stayed out after sundown. There was an eerie rhythm to life there, and at its core was the rule. A rule every child learned the moment they were old enough to understand. Never whistle in the graveyard. The warning wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't some whimsical tale designed to keep children in line. It was spoken with reverence, with fear, as though the words themselves carried weight. My father first told me when I was 7 years old, sitting on the edge of my bed after I had spent an afternoon playing in the yard. He wasn't a superstitious man, but as he spoke, his voice carried a gravity I'd never heard before. He leaned in close, his eyes searching mine as though trying to impart the importance of his words through sheer willpower. "Samantha," he said softly, "promise me you'll never whistle in the graveyard." I remember laughing then, thinking it was one of his jokes. My father had a knack for making everything feel light, even when times were hard. But this time, his expression didn't soften. His lips remained pressed in a thin line, and his knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of my bed frame. "It's not a game," he continued. "People don't come back from the graveyard the same. If you whistle, they'll come, and they won't be who you think they are." I nodded solemnly, his words embedding themselves into my young mind. Over the years, I tried not to think about them. As I grew older, I convinced myself it was just an old wives' tale, a story concocted to add mystery to the otherwise dull life of a small town. But the rule never faded. No one in Ashmere whistled, not even to call their dogs or while working in the garden. It was an unspoken law woven into the fabric of our lives. I left Ashmere at 18, eager to escape the suffocating quiet of the town and its strange, lingering shadows. Life in the city was bright and bustling, full of the kind of distractions that made it easy to forget. For years, I didn't think about the graveyard or my father's warning. But life has a way of dragging you back to the places you least want to return to. The phone call came at 3 in the morning. The harsh buzz of my phone rattled on the nightstand, jolting me awake. Evan, my fiancé, barely stirred beside me as I fumbled to answer. The screen displayed unknown caller. I hesitated, my heart already sinking. No good news ever came from a call at that hour. "Hello?" My voice cracked, thick with sleep. Silence. For a moment, I thought the line had dropped. But then a voice broke through. It was deep, steady, and tinged with something I couldn't quite place: regret, perhaps, or dread. "Is this Samantha Clark?" "Yes," I replied cautiously. "Who is this?" "This is Officer Barnett with the Ashmere Police Department. I'm sorry to call you at this hour, but we need you to come home. There's been an incident. We believe it involves your father." The words didn't make sense at first. My father? An incident? The officer's tone was gentle, but carried the weight of finality. My mind raced, trying to piece together what he wasn't saying outright. "What happened?" I demanded, my voice rising. "We'll explain everything when you arrive. We need you to identify a body." The world tilted. My father. A body. The words clashed against each other in my mind, refusing to settle into a coherent thought. Evan stirred beside me, mumbling something about the time, but I couldn't respond. I was already moving, grabbing clothes, a bag, anything to keep my hands busy. The drive back to Ashmere was long and silent. Evan drove, casting worried glances in my direction, but I couldn't speak. My thoughts were trapped in a whirlwind of memories. My father's laugh, his warm hugs, the way he'd always made me feel safe. And now, the possibility that he was gone. We arrived just as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, bathing the town in a soft golden glow that felt wrong against the weight in my chest. The coroner's office was small, a brick building tucked away on the corner of Main Street. Officer Barnett met us at the door, his face grim. He didn't waste time with pleasantries, leading us straight to the sterile, cold room where the body lay. The sheet was pulled back, and my world shattered. The figure beneath was unrecognizable, twisted and torn in ways I couldn't comprehend. But there, on the left wrist, was the bracelet I had made my father when I was a child. The beads were faded, the elastic stretched with time, but it was unmistakable. My knees buckled, and the world went dark. When I came to, I was sitting in a chair, a cup of water pressed into my hands. Evan was beside me, his face pale and drawn. Officer Barnett crouched in front of me, his expression filled with a mix of pity and something else, hesitation. "There's something you should know," he began, his voice low. "We found him just outside the cemetery, and, well, there are signs that he might have whistled." The room seemed to close in around me. Whistled. The word echoed in my mind, dragging with it the memory of my father's warning. People don't come back the same. "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. "That's just a story. It's not real." Officer Barnett didn't argue. He simply nodded, standing and offering to let me leave whenever I was ready. But I wasn't ready. Not for the questions swirling in my mind, nor the answers I feared. Back at my father's house, the silence was deafening. The rooms were exactly as he'd left them, his favorite book still open on the coffee table, a half-empty cup of tea in the kitchen. It felt wrong, like stepping into a moment frozen in time. Evan tried to comfort me, but his words barely registered. My thoughts kept drifting back to the cemetery, to the figure I'd glimpsed as we drove past. Something about it had seemed off, but I couldn't place why. Eventually, the pull became too strong to ignore. That night, I found myself standing at the edge of the graveyard, the yellow caution tape fluttering in the breeze. The shadows stretched long and dark, the air heavy with an unnatural stillness. And there, near the back, was the figure. It was a woman, her features soft and familiar, though I couldn't place why. She smiled, a warm, inviting expression that eased the tension in my chest. "Samantha," she called, her voice carrying on the wind. "I've been waiting for you." The wind carried her voice like a whisper threaded with warmth, tugging at the edges of my resolve. Every instinct screamed for me to turn away, to step back into the safety of my car and drive until Ashmere was nothing more than a speck in my rearview mirror. But I couldn't move. Something about her presence rooted me in place. Her voice held a tenderness I hadn't heard in years, not since... "Mom?" The words slipped from my lips before I could stop it, fragile and trembling, as though saying it too loudly might shatter the illusion. The figure nodded, stepping closer. She was dressed in clothes decades out of fashion. A flowing dress patterned with faded flowers and a cardigan that hung loosely over her small frame. Her hair, a pixie cut she'd worn in every picture my father had ever shown me, was neatly combed, glinting silver in the moonlight. "It's me, sweetheart," she said, her voice carrying a mix of love and sadness. "I've waited so long to see you." Tears welled in my eyes, blurring my vision. My mother had died when I was too young to remember her clearly, her absence a void that no stories or photographs could ever fill. And yet, here she was, as vivid and real as the ache in my chest. The world felt unsteady beneath my feet, the lines between reality and memory blurring. "I don't understand," I whispered, taking a hesitant step forward. How are you here?" Her expression softened, and she extended a hand toward me. "It doesn't matter, my love. What matters is that we're together now, and we can be a family again." The word family hit me like a blow. I thought of my father, his warnings, his grief-stricken eyes when he told me the story of how my mother had passed. He had always blamed the graveyard for her death, though I'd never understood why. But now, standing here in the cold night air, with her figure bathed in moonlight, the pieces began to fall into place. "What happened to Dad?" My voice cracked as I spoke the words, each one heavier than the last. Her gaze faltered, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face, guilt, perhaps, or something darker. "He was stubborn," she said softly, "but he's here now too. You just have to call him." The air around me seemed to thicken, the cool night turning suffocatingly warm. "Call him?" I echoed, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean?" Her smile returned, serene and unwavering. "Just a whistle, Samantha. That's all it takes. He'll hear you, and he'll come to us. My stomach twisted into knots. The rule, the one rule my father had drilled into me since I was a child: never whistle in the graveyard. His words echoed in my mind, overlapping with the warmth in my mother's voice. For a moment, I was 7 years old again, sitting on the edge of my bed as he begged me to promise. "I can't," I said, my voice barely audible. "I can't do that." Her face fell, and the warmth in her eyes dimmed. "Sweetheart," she said, taking another step closer, "don't you want us to be together? Don't you want a family again?" I did. More than anything, I wanted that. But something about the way she spoke, the quiet insistence in her tone, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, set my nerves on edge. My father's mangled body flashed in my mind, and a shiver ran down my spine. "What are you?" I blurted out, the words tumbling from my lips before I could stop them. Her expression froze, the warmth draining from her face like water slipping through a sieve. The shadows around her seemed to deepen, the air growing colder. For a moment, I thought I saw her figure flicker, like an image struggling to stay in focus. "I'm your mother," she said, her voice sharper now, her tone carrying a warning. "And you don't want to disappoint me." I stumbled backward, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Behind me, the graveyard stretched into the shadows, its headstones leaning like ancient sentinels. The figure before me was no longer the mother I had imagined for so many years. Her features seemed to shift in the dim light, her eyes darkening into twin voids. "You're not real," I whispered, the words trembling on my lips. "You're not her." Her smile twisted, sharp and cruel. "You're just like him," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Always doubting, always afraid. The ground beneath me felt unsteady, as though the cemetery itself were alive, shifting and writhing under my feet. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my ears as I wove between the headstones. The shadows seemed to stretch and reach for me, their cold fingers grazing my skin. Behind me, her laughter rang out, high and brittle, like the shattering of glass. "You can't escape, Samantha," she called, her voice echoing through the night. "You belong here. We all do." I didn't stop. My legs burned, my lungs screamed for air, but I didn't dare look back. The gate loomed ahead, the yellow caution tape fluttering in the breeze like a beacon. I dove through the opening, collapsing onto the cold pavement beyond. When I opened my eyes, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon. The cemetery was still and silent, its shadows retreating under the light of the rising sun. But the memory of her voice lingered, a haunting melody that played on repeat in my mind. Evan found me hours later, curled up on the porch of my father's house. He didn't ask questions, didn't press me for details. He simply wrapped me in his arms and held me as the weight of the night crashed down around me. The next morning, a package arrived. It was small, wrapped in plain brown paper with no return address. Inside was a bracelet, one I hadn't seen in years. The beads were worn and faded, but I recognized it immediately. It was the bracelet I had made for my father when I was a child. Beneath it was a note, scrawled in a shaky, familiar hand. "Promise me you'll never whistle in the graveyard. I love you. Dad." The bracelet slipped from my fingers onto the table, its clatter reverberating in the silent room. My hands trembled as I picked up the note again, reading the words over and over until they were etched into my mind. My father's handwriting was unmistakable, each curve and stroke bearing the weight of countless memories. I sat there, frozen, as the sunlight poured through the kitchen window, painting golden patterns on the walls. Despite the warmth of the morning, a chill clung to my skin, refusing to let go. The note's final plea echoed in my head. "Promise me you'll never whistle in the graveyard." Evan walked into the room, his expression heavy with concern. He sat down across from me, placing a steaming mug of coffee in front of me. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said softly. I wanted to tell him everything. The figure in the graveyard, the way she had spoken, the darkness that had wrapped itself around me. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I pushed the bracelet and note across the table toward him. He picked them up, studying them with furrowed brows. "Is this from your dad?" he asked after a long moment, his voice cautious. I nodded. It arrived this morning. No return address, just this. Evan's fingers traced the worn beads of the bracelet. It's strange, he murmured. How would he send this? I mean... He hesitated, looking up at me. He's gone, Beck. There's no way he could have written this. I know, I whispered, my voice barely audible. But it's his handwriting, Evan. I'd recognize it anywhere. He set the bracelet down, his expression a mix of disbelief and unease. Do you think... He trailed off, his words hanging in the air like an unfinished question. I don't know what to think, I admitted. But there's something wrong with this place, Evan. There's something in that graveyard. The day passed in a haze. Evan stayed close, his presence grounding me as I navigated the suffocating weight of grief and fear. Together we sifted through old photographs and documents, piecing together fragments of my father's life in search of answers. But every memory, every image, seemed to lead back to the same place, the graveyard. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, an unsettling thought took root in my mind. My father had always been insistent about the rule, but he had never explained why. The stories, the whispers of warnings, were fragments of a larger truth I had never been privy to. I need to go back, I said suddenly, breaking the silence. Evan's head snapped up. What? Beck, no, absolutely not. I have to, I insisted, standing up. There's something there, something my dad was trying to protect me from. But he's gone now, and I need to know why. Evan reached for my hand, his grip firm. You don't owe that place anything. Whatever happened to your dad, whatever's haunting you, it's not worth risking your life over. Evan, you didn't see what I saw, I said, my voice trembling. She was there. My mother, at least, something that looked like her. And she wasn't alone. There's something in that graveyard, and it's not going to stop. His jaw tightened, his eyes searching mine for any sign of hesitation. If you're going, he said finally, then I'm coming with you. We arrived at the graveyard just after midnight. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth, and a thick mist coiled around the tombstones like a living thing. The yellow caution tape had been removed, but the sense of foreboding remained, clinging to the air like a second skin. Evan carried a flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness as we stepped through the rusted gate. The crunch of gravel underfoot seemed deafening in the stillness, each step echoing like a warning. I clutched the bracelet in my hand, its smooth beads grounding me as my heart pounded in my chest. Where do we start? Evan asked, his voice low. I glanced around, my eyes scanning the rows of headstones. The back, I said. That's where I saw her. We moved cautiously, the flashlight's beam dancing over weathered stone and overgrown weeds. The deeper we ventured into the graveyard, the colder the air became, the chill seeping into my bones. Shadows stretched and twisted in the corners of my vision, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Beck, Evan said, stopping abruptly. He pointed the flashlight toward a large headstone, its surface cracked and covered in moss. Standing behind it was the same figure I had seen before. She stepped forward, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the flashlight. Her eyes locked onto mine, filled with a mixture of longing and malice. You came back, she said, her voice soft and melodic. I knew you would. Evan tightened his grip on my arm, his body tense. Beck, we need to go, but I couldn't move. Her presence held me in place, her words weaving a spell that numbed my fear. You don't have to be afraid, she said, taking another step closer. I only want to help you. Help me? I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your father couldn't protect you forever. The truth is, you were always meant to be here, with us. Behind her, the shadows began to shift, coalescing into forms that defied explanation. Eyes gleamed in the darkness, dozens of them, watching us with a hunger that made my stomach churn. The mist thickened, curling around my legs like ghostly hands. Evan yanked my arm, breaking the trance. Run, he shouted. We turned and sprinted toward the gate. the flashlight bouncing wildly in Evan's hand. The air was filled with whispers and laughter, the sound chasing us through the rows of headstones. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel them closing in, their presence pressing against my skin like a physical weight. The gate loomed ahead, and I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning as I forced my legs to move. Just as we reached the threshold, a deafening whistle pierced the air, freezing me in place. Evan grabbed my arm, pulling me forward. "Don't stop!" he yelled. We stumbled out of the graveyard, collapsing onto the pavement beyond. The whispers ceased, and the mist receded, leaving only the sound of our ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. The next morning, we packed our things and left Ashmere without looking back. The graveyard, its shadows, and the figures that lurked within would remain behind, a haunting memory etched into the corners of my mind. But as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the graveyard's reach extended far beyond its rusted gates. The bracelet sat on the dashboard, a silent reminder of the night's events. I picked it up, running my fingers over the beads, and whispered a promise into the quiet car. "I'll never whistle in the graveyard. I swear." Evan glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "Do you think it's over?" I didn't answer. I wasn't sure I believed it myself.